I worked with Jeff for probably 6 to 9 months, I would say. And still, check in periodically with him. We started our coaching work together amidst me separating and ultimately divorcing from my kid's mom. And he was a really instrumental part of my understanding how to build and maintain very healthy relationships with my kids through that process. And I'm very proud of the work that we've done, and it's definitely paid off. And I wanted to really figure out what I could do to show up well for them, what I could do to make the transition easier for them, and ultimately, honestly, how I could mostly mitigate the effects for them so that they could sort of like turn out as well as they can possibly turn out. So that was definitely the motivator for me. I would say pre-working with Jeff, a lot of it was kind of like trial and error. I think what the work with Jeff gave me were some pretty simple but not easy frameworks for like, how do I show up best with my kids? What are the things to prioritize with them kind of across situations? What are different ways I can have conversations with them in difficult moments or easier moments? How do I help them make sense of this transition, that our whole family is going through, in a way that allows them to move forward healthily and effectively, and build like foundational tools at this age that'll allow us to communicate about whatever we need to moving on. So I felt like I really developed a better understanding of my kids, what they need, what their challenges might be, and then how to help them with the next 17, 18 years of their life, where we're going to still have more things that come our way, and we're going to have to, be nimble and figure out how we do those things well together. I think we built a really good foundation for that I likely wouldn't have had without working with them. It was a mix of me coming with questions, or what I might describe as like critical incidents, like, hey, this thing just happened. Here's how I responded. What could I do better or differently in the future? Or, hey, I'm thinking about this upcoming event, right? So for example, like, I want to introduce my kids to a new friend of mine, or I want to take them to a place we haven't been together before. Like, how should I be thinking about those things? To, hey, my oldest daughter, and is kind of sleep deprived. Like, how should I be handling those moments? Or, at the beginning of the separation, for example, like my oldest had a really hard time kind of with the transition time between me and her mom. And it was sort of like, okay, what can we do to make that transition more effective for both of us? And then there was a part of the sessions that were really Jeff educating me and providing some structure around ways to think about things that I found very helpful. So, he has a really good, I think it's ABCDE framework, that's sort of like as easy as it sounds, right, to understand. And then that kind of model for me works really well, where it's like, okay, I can then sort of take the information from that and deploy it in these different circumstances, understanding kind of the basic tenets of what's going to go into a good interaction or intervention with my kids. And so I really liked the blend of being able to solve real problems that I had while also learning these kind of foundational skills for managing the challenges that we're going to face across their lifespan. I definitely feel more confident generally as a parent. And frankly, I feel more competent as a parent because my kids respond well to me. I think, honestly, like, it's completely different now than it was. I have a job where I travel a fair bit for work, and our transitions have been much better. And honestly, like, one of the things I personally struggled a lot with was this sort of like missing my kids, and I think Jeff even gave me new ways to think about what that meant and how to work with that with my daughters and how to talk about those things. And so the conversations we're able to have now, I think even for an almost 4-year-old and almost 2-year-old are pretty remarkable. Like, I remember telling her that I missed her one time, and she said, I miss you too. And then she said, do you ever miss your parents when you were a kid? And you can just have these conversations that without, learning some of those tools with him, I don't know that I'd be there. So I'm very grateful to him for helping me learn some of those things. And honestly, I've been able to carry out a lot of the practices because of the way he teaches and the quality of the work, like well beyond our time together. I would say that the core of what was different for me was that Jeff allowed me to explore and worked with me to find a way of parenting that feels natural to me. And I think a lot of the other stuff I have read or come across or courses I've taken are sort of, it's like technique driven, but it doesn't really get to what fits for me. I won't name any broad schools of parenting theory out there right now, but like there are definitely some things that are very popular that just don't resonate for me personally. Because I am data driven and I am a scientist, I've read things like The Coddling of the American Mind or The Anxious Generation, and I think a lot of the ways people are being taught to parent globally right now contribute to some of the like adolescent mental health crisis we're experiencing. And so again, I was really thinking about like, not how do I raise a kid that feels good all the time right now, or how do I raise a kid that has minimal emotional outbursts, but like, how do I raise a kid that when we're 18, she feels empowered and confident and high agency and is willing to take on the world and believes that she can do whatever she wants to do and is going to like get after it with that level of intensity. And I needed to find a parenting style that worked for me to bring that out of her, or both of them. Now that there are two. And so, you know, I think that was really the key, was like this sort of, hey, there's these foundational tools you can use, but you can apply these tools in ways that feel natural to you. And then that, of course, makes everything downstream so much easier, because if you're doing something that's second nature to you, it's really easy to use those tools when you need it. I mean, this in full sincerity was like the best investment in any parenting thing I've made by far. Again, I think I wanted to figure out how I could be the best version of myself as a dad. I don't know that I would have found that out without Jeff. I don't know that I would have found that out through any courses or books or anything else. And for me, there is a lot of benefit. Like, I think a lot of times, and this is coming from someone who also gets paid to do coaching and therapy, like a lot of what you're doing, what you're paying for, or what you're investing in is really speeding up the process to the outcome that you want. And I think passive learning or going to a course, like you still have to figure out, how do I apply it? And what does this mean for me? And, you know, am I going to get to work through like a very real thing happening for me? It just felt like something was missing. And so I think what the investment did for me was really speed up the process to finding that natural fit and style, so that I get to have more time with my kids as the best version of what I can be as a dad. And of course, I'm always learning, and you're like testing things out and you're figuring it out, right? But like, I would much rather have it figured out-ish at this point than having waited 8 more years and experimented a bunch more time. And then, you know, when they're 10, I'm finally like, oh, I feel like I finally got the hang of how I want to show up here. You know, like, I think having that information sooner was really, really valuable. And honestly, it shows in the relationship with my kids. I've had my parents, friends, people with older kids sort of comment on like, oh, it's really interesting to watch you parent and navigate, and I really respect the way that you show up with them, and they seem very safe with you. Like, all these things you would want to hear as a dad, I think, are a function of that work. I would just say, if you're unsure, give it a shot before you decide no. You know, I think there's so much of parenting is really, really hard. And it is definitely a place to invest in making it a little easier for yourself and having a little support for yourself. And so I just encourage anyone thinking about whether or not they'd benefit from some coaching to give it a shot. I think giving it a shot, and a legitimate shot, is the best thing you could do.